We're here because we are excited by the promise of the new covenant. It would not have happened without us. Last fall, working together, we helped elect this president who offered a covenant for change with the American people. As the president knows, your efforts and the hopes of working Americans brought him to the White House. I personally campaigned with you in 42 states this fall, registering people to vote, mobilizing them to get out. And wherever I went, I saw the enormous hope that working people put into this campaign. The Rainbow Coalition blossomed. Our work was preserved in an ark of hard work and hope. President Clinton led us to victory, and we provided him with the base of his support. We won 9 out of every 10 African-American votes, and that vote was the margin of victory in many states across the country. He won 6 of 10 Hispanic votes, 6 of 10 union member votes. He won the support of women, particularly single women, and that vote provided the margin of victory. 6 of 10 union members voted for him. Environmentalists supported him overwhelmingly. Gays and lesbians mobilized across the country. Students rallied to him. First-time voters voted for him in large numbers. He won, the pundits say, because the conservative coalition collapsed. He won as a new Democrat. Perhaps, but the people who voted for him, the base of his coalition is centered right here in this room. He could not have done it without us. We worked because we were excited by the promise of the new covenant, and we won. Why does the covenant excite us? The promises that excited us, the promises to keep, are fundamental. They're laid out in detail in the Democratic platform and in putting people first. Representative Velasquez spoke of them earlier. They form a covenant with working and middle-class Americans that cannot and must not be broken. Let me simply outline the major ones. A pledge to invest in people. Our future depends upon it. Invest in Head Start, daycare, child care, prenatal care on the front side of life rather than jail care and welfare on the backside. Invest now or pay later. Ensure that every child comes to school ready to learn. We must fund as a priority the immunization of every child. A pledge to invest in education. Adequate and equalized funding to provide our children with the best education. A trust fund giving every child the right to borrow the money needed to pay for college, to be paid back in service or as a percentage of their future income. A pledge to empower workers. We must reward work in America, not speculation. An increase in the minimum wage and protection from the cruel tax of inflation. Tax credits to bring every working American family above the poverty line. Training, child care, health care, and a guaranteed job for every person on welfare. Training and apprenticeship programs for the 75% of young Americans who do not go on to finish college. And end the strikeout replacement, a covenant. Family and medical leave. Enforcement of civil rights to end discrimination on basis of race, sex, creed, or sexual preference. We must have a Justice Department and an Attorney General who embodies the promise that holds America together, the promise of justice. Justice is the unfinished business. Beyond debates about exploited babysitters, The leader of justice must speak out as one having moral authority. Many of us sit here today, victims of legal barriers to justice. Many cities today are tinderboxes because of injustice. Los Angeles, Miami, Chicago, New York. The need for one in justice who speaks with authority. 46,000 cases of police brutality backed up since 1986. 15,000 on observation, 100 prosecutions. Justice. Right-wing courts stacked against the common people. Bush operatives still in place, undercutting legislation with regulation. Challenges to redistricting. The need to end second primaries in the South. Haiti illegally blockaded. The sick trapped on Guantanamo as a leprosy island. More young blacks in jail than in college. 4 times more than in South African jails. Justice, way beyond the issue of illegal exploited babysitters, must roll down as waters. Righteousness is a mighty stream. One who occupies justice must possess moral authority and the will to fight the great and critical issues of our day. A pledge to end the American health care mess, to provide comprehensive, universal, affordable, quality health care for every American, ensuring that Americans don't lose their health or their health care even if they get sick or change jobs. A pledge to rebuild America, to put people back to work. An annual investment of more than $50 billion, $20 billion of it in the Federal Rebuild America Fund focused on the cities. The promise: infrastructure, transportation, communications, environment, defense conversion. A pledge to revive American investment, private and public, in the real economy, favoring small business people who create jobs over large speculators to make nothing but paper profits, to leverage pension funds, to invest in the real economy, to ensure that every American worker and companies get their fair share and fair shake in trade negotiations. An effective use of pension funds to reinvest in America. A pledge to change government priorities, to move from a Cold War to a peacetime economy. With programs to retrain workers, retool companies, reinvest in communities. A pledge to invest in cities. A new network of community development banks to provide loans to inner cities, to home workers and entrepreneurs, neighborhood policing, and end to redlining. With $3 trillion in private and public pension funds, $6 trillion by year 2000. Felix Rohatyn suggests we get $500 billion in public and private pension funds over 10 years, matched by another $500 billion in private capital. a 10-year trillion-dollar plan, 100 community development banks, $1 billion each, long-term, low-interest loans behind the red lines to make them green lines, to rebuild and to reinvest. A pledge to end the something-for-nothing decade. Fair taxes on the rich and corporations. Reform of campaign finance. On-site, same-day voter registration. An end to the revolving door of special interest lobbyists and government officials. A pledge to restore democracy and return Aristide to Haiti. This and more is the covenant. This is not just rhetoric. These are the promises that attracted working Americans across the country. These are the pledges that gave people hope. As always, naysayers immediately say, but what about the deficit? How can we pay for this? Here the covenant is very clear. We have two pressing deficits, a budget deficit and an investment deficit. We're not making the investments that are vital to our future. Without them, the economy will continue to decline and the budget deficit will grow. So you have to address both at once. How do you get out of a blind alley? It's deep, it's dark. The further you go down, the deeper and the darker, and no lights. How do you get out? You have to come out the way you went in. Go another way. How do we get out of this hole? We have to get the money from where the money went. The covenant will not be fulfilled simply by electing a president. Already it is under assault by those who did not support it and did not vote for him. The covenant will not be fulfilled in Washington. It will only be fulfilled if people make it impossible not to act. And that is our job here. We must engage in mass, disciplined, direct action around this country to make it impossible not to act. And so we're here to plan a course of action. It's time to go back to work and to have the will to do so. What is the action that we must take together? We should be very clear about our course. Number one, we will monitor the covenant. Community by community and state by state, we will monitor the covenant. We must report to one another and to the American people about the promises made and the promises kept. These days will be exciting and distracting. As Congress takes hold of this agenda, there will be a lot of argument and maneuver. The moneyed interests are already mobilizing to protect their interests. Health care, fair taxes, fair and free trade, political finance reform, rebuild America, D.C. statehood, Haiti, Angola, South Africa, Somalia, Bosnia. None of these will take place unless the American people continue to demand action to overcome resistance. As part of this, we will set up commissions this week on health care, on trade, on economic growth, political empowerment, and other areas. To have mass meetings, hearings, town hall meetings, mass marches, to investigate and report on how the problem can be solved and how the promise must be kept and fulfilled. We will mobilize the people. The moneyed interests work in hallways and cloakrooms. They cut their deals over dinner and get a tax break for doing it. Working people cannot compete there. We must work to educate and mobilize the masses of working Americans. We must make our voices heard with street heat, town meetings, letters and phone calls. Work to inform the people. This spring we will do extensive voter registration, preparing for the key elections in cities and states this fall. We'll hold these forums on health care across the country to help fulfill this commitment. We will take a citizen task force to the Mexican border to investigate the dismal conditions and minimal terms for a free trade accord. We must lift the standards of the Mexican workers and their environment and not lower our own. We must help them do the right thing. The extent to which we talk about a free trade agreement between Canada and North America and Mexico, if such an agreement includes protection for the American worker and the Mexican worker and farmer and the environment with mutually verifiable proposition, it's a sound deal. We want an hemispheric health policy, environmental policy, energy policy. When we lift our neighbors, we help ourselves. Avoid the danger of any kind of anti-Mexican racism. Avoid that danger. The Mexicans are not taking jobs from us. Zenith and GM, textile plants, are taking jobs to them. They are allies, not enemies. And let the record show there are no illegal aliens. E.T. is an alien from another planet. There are some undocumented workers. There are no illegal aliens. And whether you have somebody working for you who speaks Spanish from Mexico or Venezuela, or somebody who, like my grandmama, speaks English, people who work for you ought to get paid for the work that they do. In the district, April 15th, another year will have passed, taxation without representation. More people live in Washington than 5 states. We pay more taxes than 10 states. More per capita than 49 states. Enough is enough. We must now explore putting our federal tax dollars in escrow until we have the right to vote. Taxation without representation is tyranny. Statehood was a promise made. It must be a promise kept. In conclusion, today we are called to act. We must choose cultural diversity over ethnic cleansing and learn to live with each other as brothers and sisters and not die apart as fools. We must break up colonialism everywhere, whether in the Marianas, in Guam, in Samoa, in Puerto Rico, in the Virgin Islands, the District of Columbia. We must fight for international law and self-determination and economic justice everywhere. We must choose coexistence over co-annihilation.